Okay, welcome back. Today, our focus is to look at daily life in the Middle Ages. So we are taking a look at 3 different I can statements. The first one, I could describe life on a medieval manor. Number 2, I could identify the code of chivalry. And number 3, I could describe the growth of towns in the Middle Ages. So again, you should have your notes and you're filling these out as we go. We are taking a look at page 13 of your packet. So the manor system. So the manor, basically what it was a fortified castle and the surrounding land. And so each noble would have their own manor, their own land, including the farmland surrounding it. So the manors became self-sufficient worlds. So they didn't rely on other areas. The land supplied the residents with everything they needed, and the serfs, and remember these were the peasant farmers, they were considered property of the lord, and many never left the manor. Okay, so they stayed in these small kind of castle territories. At the same time, we have the age of chivalry. And so knights who were lesser nobles, sometimes referred to as vassals, these knights would fight for the Lord in exchange for smaller pieces of land. And these knights were expected to follow a code of behavior known as chivalry. So chivalry is a code of honor that knights were expected to follow. Part of that had to show loyalty, bravery. They had to show that they were Christian, and they were expected to help the weak. Please fill in your blanks there. Now, around 1000 AD, you started to see the return of towns to Europe. Because remember, up until that point, people really just lived on the manor. They lived out on the farm. There wasn't a whole lot of towns or cities. That starts to change around 1000 AD. And the reason why it starts to change is because powerful lords started to bring stability and peace. There wasn't as much uncertainty. There wasn't as much fighting going on. So trade started to flourish. People started to travel again. And merchants and tradespeople began settling in these towns. Now, it's not, the best situation. A lot of the towns were still dirty. They were cramped, very busy, a lot of people going through, narrow, unpaved streets. So it's not necessarily a clean place. It's not a place where a wealthy noble would want to spend a lot of time, but your peasants that are merchants, that are traders, they're starting to kind of continue to trade and continue to make money that way. Now, at the same time, different town workers started to create something called guilds. And basically, groups formed by town workers with similar occupations, so similar jobs. For example, a blacksmith or bakers, weavers. Maybe it's a goldsmith, someone that works with gold. And so people with the same occupations would basically form, it was kind of like a club. And these guilds protected the jobs of their members. So they controlled the quality and the quantity of goods and services. So basically, it kind of made sure that everyone who did a similar job was charging about the same amount, and their quality of work was about the same. So that way people could kind of feel a little bit more secure for their jobs because they were part of this group. Okay, so we have a few checkpoints here. So describe life on a medieval manor. So I kind of started it for you by saying a manor is, tell me what a manor is, and then a serf's role on the manor involved. What did they do? Go ahead and answer that now. When you're ready, move on to the next one.
Please excuse the interruption. We have an end of the day. Thank you to all the teachers who donated $5 in support.
Okay, the next checkpoint, we have checkpoint number 14, identify the code of chivalry. And basically, the code of chivalry was, tell me what it was. And finally, the last one, describe the growth of towns in the Middle Ages. So towns began to increase in the Middle Ages because Why? And then life in a town was, what was kind of life like at that point? Make sure you filled in all the blanks. Make sure you've answered all the checkpoint questions.